Well, thank you, Rich, for that awesome introduction there. Once again, guys, my name's Dave Dartt. Good day. Hope everybody's having a good day. We're going to discuss in this particular webinar the new CWS 215 class and what is this, what is the new product that Citrix has released. Now, this is a little bit of history. Originally, when the XenApp XenDesktop 7X was released about 5 years ago, they came out with a series of levels for exams for the CCA, CCE, CCP options, and they had the 201, 203, 300 level, and the 400 level courses. Last year, Citrix started their rebranding of their products. So the XenApp and the XenDesktop 7X now has been rebranded the virtual apps and virtual desktops on the system, and they've incorporated a whole host of new terminology to define all of their various products on the system. So the Xen Mobile became and then the ShareFile and the NetScaler. These all have new names on the system to accommodate the nomenclature that they're using. Now, previously, last year, we had the CXD 210, which was the introductory course to the XenApp and XenDesktop. With the rollout of the virtual apps and virtual desktop and the accompanying deployment and selling of the Citrix Cloud option for deploying your environment, they decided to create a new class called CWS 215, which takes the strategy of presenting the deployment and the management of this environment utilizing either an on-premise deployment, which is what we've been teaching for years, where all of your particular components are deployed on-prem, or using the Citrix Cloud for your infrastructure components. So the course integrates both of these. And there are enough the similarities are high enough that once you get past that original deployment, the management part is not that difficult. So what we're looking at is a merger of managing an on-prem with a cloud-based virtual apps and desktop. Now, what you'll see is the terminology. You'll see that what's called the Citrix Workspace products. The Workspace products is covering the entire gauntlet of the products that allow you to enhance your user performance. The virtual apps, previously known as XenApp, the virtual desktops, previously known as XenDesktop, virtual apps and desktops, if you're using that particular one. We have the endpoint management, which was previously known as Xen Mobile. And we have the content collaboration, previously known as the ShareFile component. Then we have the Citrix ADC and some analytics. So we have a variety of services and products that are now under this umbrella called the Citrix Workspace. The CWS focuses on a couple of those. We focus on the virtual apps and desktops, a little bit on the gateway service that is available on when you're dealing with the cloud. So we look at this from two perspectives: the cloud and the on-prem deployment. So what is all of this? So what is the virtual apps and the virtual desktops that we're looking at here? The virtual apps and desktops is, and we're going to look at, we have a couple of slides here that we'll look at, and I'm going to bounce you over to a lab environment where I'm going to show you things side by side. The virtual apps and desktop component allows you to deploy your resources in an on-prem environment as well as your infrastructure. So this is where we're dealing with published apps and published desktops, either private desktops or server desktops in the system using Windows, Linux, giving these out to the users that are coming in from their devices, either a laptop, desktop, a tablet, coming in through either a gateway or storefront on the system. The key on the virtual apps and desktop is that all of your infrastructure is going to be deployed on-prem. So when you're looking at an environment here, let's get this guy up here. When you're looking at wait for this guy to kick in. When you're looking at an environment, you've got everything deployed within your environment. You've got your delivery controllers are deployed on site. Your storefront is deployed on site. You have Active Directory. You've got your license server. All of these are going to be deployed on site for your deployment. And you manage everything locally on the system. So this is an option that you have for deploying your system. Alternatively, we can use the virtual apps and desktop service. Now, this is exactly the same thing as virtual apps and desktops, with the exception of your infrastructure being placed in the cloud, in particular the Citrix cloud. Citrix has a cloud deployment that they make available for you to subscribe to, and this will take some of the administrative functionality off of your shoulders. The maintenance and upkeep of your delivery controllers, your storefront servers, your SQL server, your license server, and potentially your gateway and or your storefront. We can take those off your system. So the infrastructure or the control plane is now put into the Citrix cloud. So this is an option that you have, and the CWS is going to take both of these and put them side by side so you see the difference on how these particular systems are going to work on the system. So, and this is going in line with the transition that we've been seeing over the last couple of decades for how your systems are deployed. If you go back far enough, unfortunately I do, we had mainframes. Then we had desktops. Then we had servers and server racks. So back in the day when XenApp 6 was around and XenDesktop 5, 6, it wasn't uncommon for a deployment to be placed on physical servers on the system. So you as an administrator, you would come into the environment, you would deploy your servers, install your XenApp 6.5 components on it, install your applications, and then your users would come in via web interface, and we're good to go. This then required you to ensure that your updates were done on each of the servers, et cetera, et cetera. Then they started switching over slowly but surely. The companies are starting to switch over to hypervisor-based deployments, where we're looking at Xen server, now the Citrix hypervisor, ESX, Hyper-V, Nutanix on the system, where we virtualize not only your workloads but the infrastructure, the control plane. So it was not uncommon to see your delivery controllers, your license server, all of those various components now are on a hypervisor. And slowly everything is now going to the cloud on the system. And this is where we can do multiple options for how the cloud is going to be deployed inside of the system. We can use a full cloud on the system. We can use a hybrid cloud. We have a number of options there. So we can leverage the cloud to minimize the amount of work and infrastructure we need to maintain within our local site, saving money on the system, just requiring a little bit of training on there. So the CWS 215 class is going to look at some of these options. And there are 4 primary options that we look at when we're dealing with the deployment of a virtual apps and desktops environment here. We've got the completely on-prem. The on-prem option does exactly what you would expect from any on-prem data center. You install and configure your StoreFront server, your gateways on the system, your delivery controller is always 2 on that, your domain controller, your SQL server, your license server, and then your resource layer, which is including all of your systems that have the virtual delivery agent installed on it for your users. You're also responsible for that hardware layer. So this is going to give us the option to deploy an on-prem. And these can be physical or they could be virtualized. It really depends on how your particular environment is going to be configured. So that's the on-prem, and we'll focus on that one in this CWS 215 class. You could forklift this and use a service provider. With a service provider, you are basically taking all your infrastructure and your resource layer and you're giving it to somebody else. They're going to handle the data center. So we don't focus on this one too much. You could do cloud hosted using AWS or Azure, and you could forklift your entire deployment into the cloud on the system. It's going to look the exact same as it was on-prem. You have delivery controllers, your domain controllers, etc. You just have to have a couple of additional things on there. Or you could do what's called the Citrix Cloud Hosted. In this one, we take a hybrid approach on the system where we take the control layer, i.e. this guy here, and we kick it up to Citrix, and we let Citrix handle all of those various functions inside of the environment. So with the Citrix Cloud, we take the delivery controllers, we put those in the cloud. We take the license server, put it into the cloud. The site database also goes to the cloud. And potentially your StoreFront server and your NetScaler gateway components would also go into the cloud. Now in the cloud, they're not called StoreFront. So we don't call it StoreFront in the cloud. It's called the Workspace Experience. And we don't call it the NetScaler gateway. Now it's just called the gateway service. So we remove those from your infrastructure, and so that the control layer is now in the cloud, and you are no longer responsible for the cloud. You no longer have to worry about updating your delivery controllers or your license server or your SQL Server database. You don't need to worry about high availability. That's already taken care of for you. So this removes the onus of all that responsibility off of you. All you need to worry about would be your resource layer. So we have the resource layer. These are all the systems that have the virtual delivery agent installed on it. And machines called the cloud connectors. Cloud connectors replace the delivery controllers, and they proxy the connection between the between your on-prem components, the VDA, and the delivery controllers in the cloud. And this includes authentication, enumeration of resources, creation of machines using MCA. So these are some of the functions that cloud connector is going to use. The StoreFront, we still need StoreFront on-prem if that's one option we want, but we can put this or use the workspace experience in the environment. And in a second here, I'm going to take you and I'm going to show you the differences between these particular components, so you see how they differ and how they're very similar when we look at this. Same thing on the gateway. You can have an on-prem gateway, or we can choose to use the gateway service. So these are optional components that you will see inside of the system to make your life just a little bit easier on the system. Now, one of the things you'll see, and where we look at in this course, is from an administrative standpoint, how do you manage an on-prem versus how we manage the cloud-based? So we look at coming into the environment and utilizing the delivery controllers on the system and using Studio. So we have the Citrix Studio. Within the course, we'll look at some of the newer features that are available on the system. For instance, when we're looking at delivery groups for the servers in the system, when we look at some of the options for this, let's get this guy up here. Come on. Waiting for it to kick in there. When we edit the delivery group, one of the newer features, and we'll talk about some of the newer features that we have within the latest versions here. We have the restart schedule, where now we can do multiple restart schedules within the environment. So previously, in order to do multiple restart schedules, you would have to create a master restart schedule in the delivery group, and then you'd go to PowerShell using tags, and you'd create additional restarts in the PowerShell option. Now we have the ability to come in and add in as many restart schedules as we want based on the tags on the system. So that's one of the newer features that we'll see when we're looking at the studio. We'll also look at creating machine catalogs inside of the system, which hasn't changed much on the system other than adding in some additional features, the write cache disks, RAM cache, etc. When we look at the cloud-based environment, we have a slightly different way of looking at the machines here, in that we have the Citrix Cloud. Okay, good timing there for that, for the cloud to come in. We look at the virtual apps and desktops, and we have the cloud-based studio on the system. So this will be missing a couple of features here. So let's manage this. But we do have a cloud-based studio on the system. So the cloud-based studio has almost all the features that the on-prem Citrix Studio has, but it's going to be missing a few. For instance, under the configuration, you'll notice that we don't have anything that has to do with controllers, nor do we have anything to do with licensing. Those are no longer your responsibility. All you're responsible for are creating your policies, deploying your applications, and creating your machine catalogs. And the process is almost identical. It's almost identical in the way that the systems are going to deploy these out on the system. So there's not much you have to really worry about. There are a few differences, however. When you use the on-prem studio to come into the environment and define your resources, this guy closed, you create your delivery groups, you publish your applications to the delivery groups, and you're good to go. So when you're looking at the environment here, if I decide to create a delivery group, you just right-click, say Create a Delivery Group. You publish your applications to the delivery group. You give the users access to the delivery group, et cetera, et cetera. Nothing much has really changed there. When we're dealing with the cloud, however, the system does it slightly differently, in that when we create a delivery group, we choose an alternative method of assigning resources on the system. So, so when I'm looking at the Cloud Studio, if I create a delivery group, and I've already created one here, one of the options you can do, I'll go and create this, is, and this is a new option here, we've got our machines, we assign our users. One of the differences, and we'll talk, if you take the course, we talk more about why this is done, is we can leave user management to the cloud. Rather than giving it to the delivery group, either as an authenticated user or as a specific user in the delivery group, I can leave the administration to the cloud. This makes all of the resources available on this delivery group available as what's called a library offering. And this gives us the ability to give out resources to different domains. I'm going to cancel this out because I've already done it on this particular system here. And if I look at the delivery group, you'll notice on the delivery group that there's nothing here that talks about the users. So who are the users that are available? If we look at an on-prem and we look at the delivery group on the system, you're going to see a couple of things that we no longer see. You're going to see the users that are assigned to the delivery group and the desktops. But in the cloud, we no longer worry about that in the within Studio. We assign this differently. So in this case, we'll leave that alone. And when we look at the cloud, you can then have administrators coming in and you'll see what are called library offerings. The library offerings are going to provide you with the ability to give out your desktops and your applications to multiple domains on your system relatively quickly, relatively easily on the system. So that's one of the first differences you'll see when you're looking at the environment. We've also got the StoreFront. And when you're looking at the StoreFront environment, this is the access point. So the user's coming into the system using the Workspace app or the Citrix receiver, or they come in via StoreFront. This has been traditionally the way it's done. So when a user comes into the system, they access the environment, they log on, they get to StoreFront, they see all the applications on the system. A key difference that now with the cloud, instead of going to the delivery controllers, we're going to go to the cloud connectors. But I have all the applications that are available via StoreFront. I've also got the ability to do all of my customizations for my StoreFront and all the various settings we still have available. Alternatively, you can have the users come in to the workspace experience. And this is a very useful option when you have limited administrative support on the system. And it gives you a multi-tenant environment where your users can come in and they can log into the site using a customizable URL. This is owned by Citrix. The system is going to be locked down with a certificate owned by Citrix. You're not responsible for this anymore. So we can use this, and so the user could come in and you give them the link and they're going to come into the environment here and we'll log on. And this will show you all of the resources that are available that you would normally see through StoreFront. So I've got my apps. So I've got all my apps. I still have the ability to do favorites. So I've got the apps, I've got my desktops, and I do my favorites on that as well. So this gives us the ability to come in and configure a service that Citrix maintains for access into the system. Now the communication flow for this will be a little bit different than the standard StoreFront. And one of the things we talk about when you take the CWS 215 class, we dive a little bit deeper into the communication flow and the various steps and how they differ on that. So we can come in and we can configure this. Now, one of the issues to bear in mind, I suppose, would be that with the workspace configuration, the workspace experience configuration, there are some limitations in what you have available to you on the system, i.e. we don't have as many options for authenticating our users. We can use the Active Directory, username and password, we can use a token, or we can use Azure Active Directory on the system. Our customization options, somewhat limited here. So these are somewhat limited to some very, very basic things, company logos, colors of links, etc. We can integrate certain services here. So we have a number of services that can be integrated. So you could use the gateway service. You could integrate the workspace experience with an on-prem site. So you could come in and integrate this with an on-prem delivery controller on the system. And then we have the sites that we can bring in. So we can define our sites and we can integrate these into the workspace experience. I currently don't have any, so you're not going to see that in this particular system. So this gives us the option of coming in and defining how the users are going to be brought into the environment. So we'll look at that particular option. We've also got, when you're looking at this, we've got the, so there's the on-prem studio versus the cloud studio. And some of the differences you'll see when you're looking at this. The on-prem studio still has the controllers on the system. It still has the licensing, whereas the cloud studio does not have those anymore. The on-prem studio has the app v component. So if you're integrating streaming from a Microsoft App V server, whereas that's not supported in the cloud. We've also got the director. So another difference that we'll look at in the system is the difference between an on-prem director and a cloud director. Now, for the most part, at this point in time, the cloud director can do almost everything that the on-prem director can do. So the two of them are almost identical with a few changes in the cloud director, i.e. You'll no longer see the infrastructure component on the cloud director because Citrix is responsible for that, you're not. You'll also not see the licensing status over here because that is another component that the Citrix Cloud is going to maintain for you on there. And that includes the updates and the high availability options that you will see in that. Now with an on-prem, to get started with an on-prem, all you need to do is you need to choose your hosting infrastructure. So that could be a hypervisor. You choose a cloud-based platform. You choose. You configure all your components. You then install it. You're good to go. With the cloud, however, we do need to create an account. And if you want to test this out, if you want to play with the cloud, you can always go to cloud.citrix.com and you can choose to create a free account. And so they'll give you a free account on your system and they'll give you some of the services to play with for 30 days. So you can come in and you can test these and see how they work. So it's a nice ancillary when you're taking the class to have this on your also on your system. So you can come in, you can play with it and break it on your own. And when you do that, the system is going to allow you to choose the services that you want to have inside of your environment. So do you want to have the secure browser service? So do you want to control the websites that your users are coming into on the system? Do you want to use the smart tools? Do you want to use the XenDesktop, XenApp system? Now it's virtual apps and virtual desktops. So when you're looking at the cloud system here, you're going to see all of your services and you'll see names for these are changing. And you'll see a calendar that tells you when this is going to expire. So in this case, mine is going to expire in 2 days for that. Some of them won't expire. Smart Tools is a component that if you have a subscription, this will work just fine without expiring. And these are some tools that you'll have available to you for monitoring and maintaining your system. We'll talk about that in the CWS 215 class. There are also a number of additional available services, access control, Citrix ADC, the analytics component. This is a way of proactively monitoring your sites for the websites that the users are going on to, what activities are they using, are they going to malicious sites, etc. Application delivery management, content collaboration, notice they still have the old share file logo there, endpoint management, etc. So we have a whole host of options. We can also use the Workspace Environment Management, which is one of the components I really like on the system. So you can use this service for Workspace Environment Management on the system. And this is going to be a cloud-based version of the same thing that you would normally do on-prem. The app layering component is done a little bit differently than on the cloud. That's an actual machine. And then you have lab services that you might want to come in, and these are trial. So these are services that Citrix is working on, and they may or may not make them full-on available services depending on the capabilities of it and the demand for that within an environment there. So when you're looking at choosing an account, this is one of the options that you have available for you on the system. So you can just choose enable a new service. You buy your licensing. on there. And then you just come in and you log on. So this is going to give you the ability to come in and manage and monitor your system. Now, in this case, notice it says XenApp and XenDesktop. You will see some inconsistency in the naming as they slowly transition. So this is going to give us the ability, this is your administration console. We have our studio, your director, and then you'll see about your cloud updates. So what's been currently updated on your system. This will get you that guy going there on the system. So when you're looking at the cloud, and we'll look at a couple of these things in the class, we have all the available services that you're going to see on the system. The workspaces, virtual apps and desktops, mobility, content, these are things that we discussed in the class. So you see all the services that previously you had to deploy within your system, now being offered as a service within the environment. So this will give you some options there for deploying the site on the system. So, and then we got one little thing here. This is going to be your cloud connector architecture. This is the architecture that is slightly different from a standard deployment. Oops, and no, I don't want that. This is going to be the cloud connector. This is the component that is replacing your delivery controllers inside of the system, and it's the proxy. It will proxy all of the communication from your on-prem or your cloud-based resources up to the Citrix cloud on the system over a secure 443 connection. And it works behind NATs and HTTP proxies on the system. And it's going to proxy all of your VDA registrations, your authentication calls to your hypervisor from the delivery controller down, licensing, all of that is going to be proxied through the cloud connector on the system. So, and this is a very, very low maintenance. Once you have this installed and configured, you're no longer responsible for the updates, and we're good to go. So the CWS 215 class is going to take a hybrid approach for how you want to deploy your environment. And it'll take the on-prem and the cloud-based deployments. It will merge the two, show you the differences between these, and prep you for the CWS 215, the exam, the certification exam. Now, as a real quick side note, the current exam that is out is the 1Y0203. That does not cover the cloud components. The current exam that maps directly to the CWS 215 is currently in beta, and it should be available probably third quarter, maybe fourth quarter of this year on the system. So we're in a transition stage on your environment. And when you take the class, we focus on, well, this will be on this exam and this will be coming up on the next one. So, which is going to be useful. And once again, as Rich mentioned earlier, if you are already certified and your certification has not expired, just sitting in this class will allow you to be recertified. I currently have a student in my class now that I'm teaching this week that is undergoing that track right now. So that said, that's a quick introduction into the CWS 215 class. At this point, Rich, I'll hand it back to you for question and answers.
Okay, thanks, David. I did want to clarify that for the CCAV only, even if your CCAV is expired, you have until June 30th to recertify.
They changed that, okay.
Yeah, it's only for that certification. All the other certifications, you have to attend the course before your certification expires. But this is just kind of a last opportunity for anyone with an expired CCAV. Yeah. Okay, so David, we actually don't have any questions today. So
okay.
We had a few comments. Oh, actually, we just got one that came in. Let me make sure I can read it here. Okay, someone is asking for, I don't know if you can read between the lines on this one, Citrix printing recommendations on the cloud and virtual apps.
Yeah.
So, yeah, okay.
Nothing really changes on that. The policy settings, because all of your printing is still going to be done via policies. So, or you could use the Workspace Environment Management option. So when you're looking at printing, the cloud doesn't handle any of the printing. That's still going to be on-prem. It's still going to be done with policies. Now, your policies that you select for your printers can either be done with the GPO that's on-prem through your Active Directory, or you can use the studio policies that you see inside of the Cloud Studio. The downside to that is that if you currently have a deployment and you transition over to the cloud, there's no quick and easy way of taking your studio policies that you currently have defined on-prem and putting them on the cloud. You're going to have to recreate them. So.
Okay, excellent. I am getting some questions about the presentation, if it will be available or we'll have another one later. So just to reiterate, we did record this session. You'll receive an email in a couple of days that will have a link to view the recording. You could also forward that on to anyone that you want. Someone else is requesting the PowerPoint presentation. I don't believe we have anything confidential in the PowerPoint presentation, but we're not going to mass distribute that. So if you would like a copy of the PowerPoint, just email me and request it. Again, the best email address for me is rich, R-I-C-H, at layer8training.com. We also plan to have at least one webinar per quarter. My guess is the next topic will be around Citrix ADC and Gateway. So stay tuned for more information on that. I believe that is all the questions that we have today. So David, I again want to thank you for preparing this webinar, for taking time out of your busy day to provide this for us. And we hope that this has been beneficial for everyone that's attended. And again, if you have any questions at all or need any information, feel free to email info@layer8training.com or rich@layer8training.com, and we'll get back to you as soon as possible. David, anything else to add?
No, at this point, I'm good.
Okay, we're going to sign off. Again, thanks everyone for your time today. Have a great week.